Hey and welcome to my little video about Xenoblade 2, or also called Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where I will just talk about why I love this game so much. It's like a JRPG created purely for me in a way, because it feels exactly what I want from a JRPG, a gripping story that makes you feel things, in a serious but also funny way. It's not ashamed of what it is. It handles mature themes well, while also doing it in a way that many people would call cringe. But I just love exactly that about it. It doesn't care about how it's viewed, and instead it just does what it wants. Everything just clicks and the stars align perfectly, because I don't think I would ever quite love a game as much as this one ever again. But maybe I will. You know, you should never give up hope after all. Also, there will be lots and tons of spoilers, including Xenoblade 1 and 3, so if you still want to play those games, you should close the video. Or maybe you're the kind of person that doesn't care about spoilers, which I wish I could relate to. Let's just kinda get started. I love the art style, the world, the music, the characters, the exploration, everything. Except maybe the combat system. I like it, but I don't exactly love it, so I won't really talk about that one. But obviously, it wouldn't be a real video if I just said that I love those things without explaining why I love them, so let's start with that. The gameplay in the background can stutter a little bit here and there, because I recorded it from an emulator and my PC is kinda bad, but I still turned on some settings like anti-aliasing so it looks better than on the actual Switch. I couldn't really use my real Switch for it since I just recently started a new playthrough and didn't want to speedrun it to get all locations. Kinda hate how you can only have one save file unless you make more accounts on your Switch, which I should have done. The different titans are just such a joy to explore. The game starts pretty small in comparison to Xenoblade 1, where you have a whole village and see how huge the world can already be by going up the hill through the cave and seeing the colony from above and then having the crazy action starting. Here you start on a tiny titan in comparison to the other titans, because Grams he's not that big, and then two boats basically. Not much room for exploration or room for anything kinda, despite the Argentum Trade Guild having multiple floors and being bigger than you might think at first. But it sets up the first time you actually get into a super big field really well, just like Xenoblade 1 did with how you go through the cave and boom, go up plains. Holy heck. Here it's Gormod after you land on it and have to go through the lower parts of it first, and then boom, the open field part, and god is the game beautiful. Yeah, sure, it's not the most advanced graphics and all that, but it's so colorful and bright, and the whole art style is just so appealing to me. It just looks so inviting to explore. And there's so much variety too. Big open grassy fields, a desert area that doesn't suck ass in the game because normally I don't like deserts that much, the land of Morithra, which is a destroyed version of our own planet, a snow kingdom, alien structure-like islands as an archipelago, and I even love the Spirit Crucible Alpes cave, mostly because of the music though, and it's a place most people normally hate, and many more. It feels like a real adventure going from place to place, always a change of scenery when switching from titan to titan. Many places look and feel similar to places that existed in the first game but with their own feeling, like Goa Plains and Gormod, Zartul Marsh and the Kingdom of Uraya, Valak Mountain and Tantal, which in one way makes sense. Xenoblade 1 played on two giant titans, while 2 plays on many smaller ones, and if you played the games and know the backstory about how the worlds are connected and created, it just kinda connects, especially if you also add Xenoblade 3 into the mix nowadays. And the verticality of the places is just insane. Not as insane as in Xenoblade X, which is still Monolith Soft's coolest world to date, but there's so many paths to take and walk on to find secret bosses or chests. For most titans, you can also see the world tree in the background, always getting reminded of what your actual goal is. Also, the cities are beautiful, every one of them having their own architecture and own distinct look. Like Torigov just mostly being made out of wood since they got a lumberjack company and all that, and have a very forest-like feel to the city, while then you got Maima, the capital of Uraya, which just has this magical feel and look to it, even with a cool theater. Exploring cities in JRPGs is one of my favorite things to do, and for some reason they just make me really happy, thinking about how it would feel like to actually live here and all that kind of stuff. I swear I'm not that weird. There's also plenty of chests everywhere when jumping around the roofs or going through tiny alleyways and finding something nice there. Sometimes even just something as a beautiful view of the whole city itself feels really rewarding. Just look at Vanserchan in the background at night. It's so beautiful, I get like floored every time I go through it. And then sliding down this water slide and seeing the beautiful instant of the Titan. It makes me wow every single time, despite seeing it so often and the graphics not being state of the art, but that's just how Monolith Soft works, making the most beautiful game worlds despite the hardware. In a way, they also profit from the Switch being somewhat weaker. Imagine if Monolith Soft tried to create a huge world like this on a PlayStation 5. We would have to wait 10 years for every game they make probably then. It just shows how great they are at making worlds look appealing, that they can do it on such weaker hardware so consistently. Like for me, Xenoblade X on the Wii U is still one of the most beautiful games created, and it's on the Wii U. Also, there's so much world building everywhere, NPCs talking about other places in the world that you will get to later, and how they see those other titans and cities, because there's a lot of unrest going on between the different countries. War sucks, that's all I can say. One great feature is also that it marks NPCs with new dialogue, because the farther you get into the story, the more dialogue even older NPCs have, because of all the changes that happened in the world. So it marks the NPCs with new dialogue, with a little star besides the cloudy head thingy, when you get close to them to see, hey, this dude has new dialogue for you, instead of just having to manually talk to everyone again, just to see if the dialogue changed. I have replayed the game around 6 times by now, and I'm still not bored of running around all the places despite pretty much knowing every single nook and cranny. Something about every single place just feels so magical and inviting, despite some of them actually being quite hostile obviously. But some of the enemies in the game are also just so cute that I wouldn't mind them attacking and eating me. You want to take every path possible, even if there's a huge level 90 monkey blocking it, and you try to sneakily get around it before you get pounded into a pile of dust by it. But you just try it again and again till you get past it, and that alone feels so rewarding in the Xenoblade games. Always remember though, running away is a valid tactic sometimes. The story is just a beautiful tale of all kinds of people struggling with themselves and the state of the world, and seeing how each of them responds to it differently, finding one's purpose in life or a place to belong, a place to be able to call it home. Someone like Rex, who lost his parents, but instead of letting it define his life, he is obviously sad about it, but he moves on and lives life with his optimism. In comparison to him, you have someone like Amalthus, who also lost his mom and went onto the completely different path, never being able to get past the hatred he developed because of it. Every character dealt with their trauma in such different ways, which just makes it so interesting to learn about them and what happened to them. And also how they developed throughout the story. What happened to Jin to turn him into a bad guy? Why did Nia join a bunch of bad guys in the first place? What is Pyra's deal, and why does she want to go to Elysium? Is Elysium even real? What is Elysium even? There are so many questions you ask yourself, and literally every single one of them will be answered, sometimes in obvious but also in not so obvious ways. I am not gonna give a whole retelling of the story, but it has just everything. Twists and turns, moments that made me cry like a baby, funny scenes, action-packed scenes, a whole chapter dedicated to people who enjoy giant robot mates fighting. It's a wild ride, especially starting around chapter 6. I personally wouldn't say that the game starts slowly, but I see that complain a lot, that it needs a bit to get going, but I feel it struck a good balance between letting you walk a bit in the shadows before the true action starts. In a way, it feels like the thing with the horse and the carrot on a stick. The game always has that big plot thingy right in front of your face, dangling it around to keep you going. And it worked on me. When I played the game, I couldn't put it down, because I was always excited to see what happens next. Even in the beginning chapters that people call slow. The ending of chapter 3 with Mythra revealing herself, and in chapter 4 being a bit more of a light-hearted chapter with still some interesting and important plot points to the overall story, just lets the player breathe a bit. Because after chapter 6, it's just gonna be the wildest ride a game probably has ever taken me on. Hitting you with everything it has, but it never feels overwhelming in that way. In other games, there's often those stretches where a game realizes, oh wait, I forgot to tell you this and that, and now we will dump all of those informations onto you, that wasn't even real English, but never mind, onto you in these huge exposure dumps, and you better remember all of this. But I never had that feeling here, despite bombs being dropped every few steps along the way later on. And the overall theme of the game is also a beautiful one, on how to overcome your own fears, your own doubts, and giving your own life a meaning. Never giving in to nihilism, regardless of how bleak things are looking. And a big part of that is my boy Wax, with his optimism, which can be grating on people, but he's much deeper than people think he is. And I will talk about that later when I talk about the cast. There's many more themes it tackles, such as suicide, slavery, existentialism, memories, and so many more. Some more in depth, some less. For some people it hurts the game that it also has those little silly scenes, such as the Mythra sleepwalking one, and they can't take the other serious moments seriously because of it, which I can't really relate to. And those scenes are just a few throughout the whole game, which can go on for over 50 hours. Think about this in a real life kind of way. Despite my life being shit, I can still jog around and have fun. It doesn't have to be one or the other. The game never has one of those silly scenes in an unfitting way. Nobody says some funny one-liner after a person just died or other serious shit went on. The game knows when to be serious and when not. Now it's the time for the cast, and most of the characters deserve their own video with how much you can talk about them, but I will just quickly explain why I love them so much. Thinking about it, the cast in Xenoblade 1 was never really something that made me think, wow, I really love these characters. They were part of a story that felt interesting and fun to me, instead of them making it interesting and fun, if that even makes sense. Not to say they suck or anything, but they feel flat for the most part except for some exceptions, and it's mostly the bad guys who I really like in Xenoblade 1. But I'm not trying to turn it into a fight between the casts. In 2 I just love basically every single character. A few were kinda whatever though, like Vandam for me. Before I come to the main characters, because I want to talk a bit more in detail about those, let's talk a bit about the elephant in the room, the character designs for them. Even though I really don't want to open that can of worms, I do understand why people would hate most of them, but me, I love 95% of them. The gacha system itself sucks, but I love the idea of bringing in so many different artists, despite their art may be clashing with the others and producing this uneven look. All the blades have their own cool or weird look to them. There's so many designs that I love, but my standouts would be Shiba, because whoever thought up a character that is a sassy lesbian who rides around in a bathtub and likes to kick noppons to the moon and enjoying tea parties while also having twin tails that are basically drills for some reason, is a true genius. Florin, because well, who doesn't like cute boys that look like girls and use their charm to trick people into giving them free stuff? Nobody can resist cuteness after all. Cute things are what we all look for in life. If you don't like cute stuff, then, well, you're weird. Sorry, that sounded kinda mean, but there's just nobody who doesn't like cuteness, so I'm being mean to nobody. Korra, who's a flashy Genki girl, full of energy that I would love to go clothes shopping with and just hanging out with, talking about fashion and other things. Adenine, I can't really pronounce the name really well, one of the greatest designs in the game. She's a total nerd, but who doesn't love nerds? And Newt, I lack discipline, and she would drill it right into my head and have me do like 1,000 push-ups every day till I got my discipline to get my life back on track. Makes me a bit sad that she barely got fan art like most of the rare blades, and those were only a few. Yeah, they do not fit together at all, but it's lame to always have everything look as if it belongs in the same game, in my opinion. I love designs that are so full of variety, where if you told someone these characters all come from the same game, they would ask you if you're pulling their leg. But like I said, I do understand why people don't like that kind of style and prefer designs that fit together in your opinion, like the Tora group, a bunch of people that got wronged by the world and now want to end it. Even though one of the members, Malos, is basically the reason why the world went down a bad route, but I will come to that later. They all were designed by Tetsuya Nomura, which every JRPG fan should know. You know, he's the guy who designed the characters from Final Fantasy VII and many other Final Fantasy games, Kingdom Hearts, The World Ends With You, etc. And they all have the same look to them. Not just the way they are drawn, but they look more grounded in a way compared to the main cast, or the rare blades, because they're not that colorful. Like if you look at them, you would think, yeah, that's a group that belongs together. Then you look at the main cast with all of those goofballs and think, they do be looking quirky but not cohesive. But to me, that does not matter. My group, full of idiots, does not have to look like they belong together. I love variety, I love goofiness. The best thing is that designs are subjective, despite people trying to tell you otherwise. There is no right or wrong, in my opinion, when it comes to it. Bad character designs are a myth for me. The worst thing a character design can be, in my opinion, is being boring or generic. There's no such thing as over-designing a character. Let your creativity flow. Do these huge boots on Rex look goofy? Yeah, they do. Does his outfit look a bit dumb when he's not using it to salvage stuff? Yeah, it does. But it doesn't make it bad for me. And it is not distracting in the slightest for me either. I just don't mind it. But I never had this with any game. I just can't relate when people don't want to play a game because of bad character designs or things like that. It doesn't make a game worse for me, but it can make a game more interesting for me when I see designs that speak to me, like Xenoblade 2 does. Luckily, we live in a world where you can have your own opinions on things like this, so if you think the designs are bad, then they are bad for you. And if I think they're good designs, then they are good designs for me. Yay, everyone wins, because in the end, it's nice to have different opinions, isn't it? Would be boring if everyone just agreed on everything. Also, when talking about the rare blades, you can't just ignore the gacha mechanic of the game, because that's how you acquire them. You get a core crystal, you use it, and you either get a rare blade which has its own cool design and stuff, or you get a generic blade that you will see over and over. And yes, gacha sucks. The only good thing I can say about it is that it kinda makes the start of every playthrough a bit different, depending on which blades you get. Nowadays you get tons of legendary core crystals right from the start with the expansion pass, so you can pull most of the better blades, but when the game launched, those were insanely rare, just like the overdrive protocols. Those are for when you pull a mismatching blade on a character that you don't want that blade to have. They are blades who work best at being tanks, healers, etc. So you want the healers on the healer, and the tanks on the tank, but you can also turn a character into a jack of all trades who has it all. I prefer the classical approach though, so it sucks when you get DPS blades on Nia, but with an overdrive protocol you can switch that blade to another character. But again, there were only like 4 or 5 of them in the whole game before the expansion pass, and later on in the game Rex becomes the master driver and can use any blade he wants. People say you shouldn't put blades on Rex because of that, but it's a bit silly since you don't unlock that till you're basically almost done with the game. Nowadays, with all the free items you get from the expansion pass, it becomes somewhat of a non-factor, unless you really want to grind off those legendary core crystals to get a chance at Cosmos. Another thing about the rare blades, or blades in general, is that they come with specific skills, like electronical knowledge when it's an electro blade, which you sometimes need to explore certain areas. In Xenoblade 1 or 3, you could basically go anywhere in the area you're in if you're sneaky enough around high level monsters. Same goes for Xenoblade 2 sometimes, but there are some places you can only reach if you got the fitting field skill, so all your exploration felt for nothing because you can't proceed or can't open the treasure chest at the end of it. There's not too many of those, but it does kinda suck to first have to level a blade for its fitting skill even when you never have another use for that blade. There's like 2 checks like this in the main story path too, so that can get you stuck for a tiny bit. Gacha sucks, but it does hit that dopamine rush you sometimes desire in life, and it's free. But I obviously can't defend that one. Same with the field skills, but for some reason I don't mind those 2 things myself, despite agreeing with people that they suck. It's kinda weird how that works. I guess that's how love works. You don't mind some of the flaws of your partner unless they really bother you. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the thing that also plays a big role while I love the game. The characters and their personalities. I really want to do them justice, but also keep it shorter than longer, because most of the characters deserve their own little video in a way with how much there is about them, but I will never be able to make so many videos about them, so I will keep it kinda short here, even though I'm not keeping it too short. It's kinda short like me. I'm 5'2". It doesn't matter. Let's talk about the characters. Rex is just such a good boy, always looking out for others instead of himself too sometimes, which can be a bad thing, and the game calls him out on it too at certain points. Before the whole game kicks off, he just was a relatively carefree young boy who worked an honest job to try to make money for his village with some dopes about the world too, seeing so many titans die and thinking about the unsure future. Then suddenly all that stuff in chapter 1 happens and he has to basically save the world, and it perfectly already shows his naive character. Some magical girl asks him to take him to some magical place that maybe doesn't even exist, and he just says, yeah, sure, let's go. I mean, Pyra basically saved his life and revived him, so it just kind of makes sense to repay her. But most other characters would still have some kind of doubts about it, like before Nia joins and she calls him out on it, asking him what if Elysium isn't even real and Pyra is just using him and will betray him. It's also the scene where Pyra just drops her funniest line of how she can't do that since she doesn't even have a knife. I love you, Pyra. One thing about him is that he's trying to play hero too hard at points, always trying to save everyone and somehow find a way to do just that, which shows just how naive he is because his view of a hero is the perfect view of a hero that never loses or gives up. What if he actually ran away in chapter 3 for example? Would Vandam still have died? Maybe, but through his actions he always tried to push it too far, and despite him wanting to save people, they keep on dying all around him. And a true hero wouldn't let things like that happen, right? He finally breaks down in chapter 6 and wants to give up, because everything seems pointless because he took Pyra's and Mythra's power for granted in a way and immediately wants to give up when it was ripped away from him. Telling the party he wants to give up and just go back to his normal life, and getting lots of shit from the party because, well, Rex's optimism is what got everyone so far. Without it, they wouldn't have met and stayed together like this. That's where he gets a reality check and has everyone tell him to not give up, even if things may look pointless. Because that's what helped them when he was that lucky-go-happy guy towards them. So they want to repay what he did to them, to him. Because, well, he is for the first time on his knees, not knowing where to go and what to do. Also, it makes him realize that in a way, he used Pyra and Mythra as a means to his goal, instead of truly doing it together, finally truly accepting them for who they are. Not even caring that Pyra and Mythra kinda used him to fulfill their own goal too, getting to Elysium to tell their father to please let them die. But he just accepts that without batting an eyelash, because in a way he did that too, like I just explained, how he took them for granted, because he was looking for that kind of power to save the world. Getting both sides finally together on the same page. Just full trust in each other. He gives Pyra and Mythra what they needed, seeing them as normal people, without thinking about their powers. And not just Pyra and Mythra, he acts as the support pillar of basically everyone he meets, with his optimism, despite knowing how fucked the world can be. He's the antithesis of Malthus in a way. Both know that the world is full of bad things, but Rex accepts it and knows that this can't be changed. It's just what humanity is to a degree. He says it himself. You can't have good things without the bad things. It balances itself out. He tries to change this by making the world a better place in a natural way, being nice and kind to people to show them, hey, even if you may be a baddie, you can still change your ways and can be forgiven, after you maybe go to prison for a bit. People say he has no growth or whatever, but in the end he learns to let go, and that sometimes in life you need to give up on certain things, especially when it comes to the decisions of others. Like obviously it hacking sucks that Pyra and Mythra are pretty much set to die in the end, but imagine if Rex did his usual thing of actually trying to force his way through it, actually going after them to try to save them, and then boom, World Tree explodes and he dies. End. But he finally learned to accept this and lets go, even if it really hurts because he loves them, and he gets rewarded for it. When I first played the game, I was a bit shocked at that point, because it felt like Zeke and Gramps were kinda berating him with their words of like, how long are you planning on being a baby? But I think that's exactly what he needed at that point. Some harsh words to realize how much he learned, that this isn't about himself, this is Pyra's and Mythra's decision. If this is what they want and choose, then he needs to accept it, regardless of how he feels about it himself. I just really love optimistic characters that go through hardships and don't lose themselves, even if it is maybe an old classic trope. Tropes are great if they're used well, which in the case of Rex, it is used well. He actively changes and earns those things, and they're not just given to him. And he has a good sense of humor as well, even if it's really silly at points. There's no other guy who would get taught how the world was created by the literal god of the world and then seconds after recites his silly Salvager code quotes to God himself. Those are the little things that make him great for me. He can be serious when needed, but he also has many goofy and awkward moments, which just makes sense since he is a teenager. He would truly be boring without those moments. Both of them never wanted to be some kind of goddess. Especially Pyra has those very heavy boots to fill, and it's not like she had a choice. Neither did Mythra though. Basically created to keep the balance of the world in check, she had to do these things like trying to save the world because, well, without her power it would have already been destroyed. Mythra created Pyra, a totally different self, to get rid of those responsibilities, and even kinda shaping her like the ideal image of what people would think a goddess would be like. Warm, caring, good at basically anything that makes you think that's how a mom should act. With Pyra, she just created a better half of herself, of what people expected her to be more like. In comparison to that, Mythra is brash, can't show her emotions well, and in a way feels really childish sometimes, always getting into little slap fights with others and constantly teasing them or getting teased back because she makes it way too easy to tease her. It's not what you would expect from a goddess at all. She's pretty self-confident, but there's always those little doubts she has about herself, but she doesn't want to be seen weak to others or want them to see how flawed she can be, so she always puts on the tough teasing act instead of letting her emotions show in a healthy way. It all hits the breaking point when Mythra goes woke without even needing Adam and basically ends the whole Torna Titan by herself and killing countless people, which you can't even blame her for. It basically would have happened anyways if she didn't try to stop Malos. But seeing her friends die and even seeing her own driver being afraid of her, the whole event made her so afraid of herself and the power she carries that she basically swore to never use it again, and even goes as far as developing a whole new personality that takes over for her, only wanting to be in the back of Pyro's head, never wanting to come out again and only accepting it when there's no other way to save Rex and the party in chapter 3, because in a way it does involve her too. Since she created Pyra and at this point Pyra already really likes Rex in the party, it would just be too cruel of her to not help out and just letting Pyra go through something like what she had to go through, losing her friends. Only at that point she finally wakes up because I think to a degree the extra guilt of it would have just crushed her. Just watching it happen despite her being able to do something about it. It just wouldn't be fair to Pyra. Pyra has her own insecurities, always trying her best and wondering if her best is good enough, while also having to carry the burdens that Mythra carries with her, going on this journey basically to ask the creator to let them die finally, which they luckily changed their mind of because Rex shows them how beautiful and wonderful the world actually can be, even if you have so many painful memories as your baggage. There's always time to create more memories, and that time they will be happy, hopefully. It makes me a bit sad when people just see them as waifu bait instead of actual characters who have so much about them, but on the surface it's obviously just OMG, Mummy Pyra, please give milkies, and OMG Mythra, she's such a tsundere, haha, XD. They deserve better than that. Maybe my favorite character in the whole game. Not hard to guess that, I guess, when seeing my avatar and everything on YouTube. Please don't let this age badly when I change it one day. So I think no, I'm blessed to forever use a Nia avatar on YouTube despite me changing my avatars on every social media platform almost daily. Nia's whole story is about finding a place to belong to and being accepted for who she is, which she even struggles with herself. Being a flesh eater and having to play pretend princess after she was pretty much forced to eat a human and called someone else her dad that she had no real connection to. And Rex and the rest pretty much just do that. They accept her easily, because on the surface and outside Nia is a normal Gomotti girl pretty much. But the hot spring scene already foreshadows that something is up with Nia, and eventually she comes out as a flesh eater to the party and people are just like, yeah, that's cool, we still love you, because she knows she can trust these people and puts her full trust in them, just as much as they would trust Nia. She was with Torna at first because they were most likely the only ones that understood her pain in a way, because well, they are flesh or blade eaters as well. But Nia did obviously not agree with the other views they had, like destroying the whole world, and it was impossible for her to live a normal life since she was getting hunted by Indul for her flesh-eater nature, so she saw no other way except for when she meets Rex. Still being a bit cautious, she warms up more and more to him and the party and finally makes her feel like she has a place to belong to, also finally being accepting of herself, because everyone else accepts her, so why shouldn't she also accept herself? When you talk about Rex and Nia, you obviously have to talk about that one scene, which has even more relevance now after Xenoblade 3 2. At the moment where Rex says he loves her too, and all of you guys, he was the typical dense shonen protagonist who was caught too deeply in his little fight, while also getting confessed to, but a post-battle dialogue where he wants to talk to Nia about it shows that he actually meant it in a sincere way, which also gets shown in the last chapter when he has to fight the fake Nia and she says he only got eyes for Mythra or Pyra, which is one of his worst fears when it comes to how Nia actually sees him. He wanted to clear it up what he really meant with it, and after Xenoblade 3, we all know he actually meant it. It's a bit sad how the scene gets memed on, and is kinda out of context without the post-battle dialogue, which most people maybe never even heard when they played the game. I think Monolith Soft could have maybe included a tiny little scene after the whole Nia Awakening scene to clear it up a bit more, but it was most likely also the first time ever Nia actually had a person tell her that she's loved, and that's just so sweet, because she deserves to be loved after all she has been through. And even without her tragic backstory, she's just such a fun character and compelling character too. Being sassy and funny with it, it never quite comes across as being mean-spirited though. Always ready with a good comeback or a good line when putting someone into their place, but also being able to be serious when needed, which goes for many people in this game. She also does a little dance when fighting, and how cute and cool is that? I wish I could dance. I mean, I danced for school once, but let's not talk about that. Well, Tora is probably one of the most hated characters in the series, not just in the game, and not totally without a reason. He's a tiny fluffy Noppon who's extra won't though, because he's extra big, and pretty much a pervert who likes robot girls, especially in maid uniforms. In a way, I can't even blame him for that. I like those too. The only people he ever really knew were his dad and his grandfather, and let's just say they were a bad influence on him. And I won't really make myself any friends with this, but I just love this little fella and I would protect him with my life. But before that, I would teach him how to respect women a bit more. And in a way, that's Rex for him. He finally makes a cool driver friend and wants to impress him by showing him the blade he created himself, and Rex and Pyra do think that's pretty neat, till the closet reveals all the maid uniforms. Tora lacked friends, and you can tell that. He has no filter and just says some really awkward things without thinking about it, but the game actually calls him out on it. He does get judged for the things he says, but in the end it's all just kinda harmless goofy stuff. He's the game's comedic relief punching bag character together with Zeke, but both of them have their moments aside from the goofiness too. He's the one character where I can totally understand people not liking him one bit even. And I don't even want to openly debate about how he is supposed to be the kind of character that is supposed to reflect the player himself with the way they objectify Pyra and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, he's not that deep, I think. Also just absolutely love that this outfit is not a shitpost, but an actual in-game outfit for him. I don't think anyone would actually think this is real if you show it to them. He's actually just like me. Poppi is just a great character. Cute and funny, but also surprisingly deep, because she struggles with the same problem as Mythra and they bond over it, having so much power that they are both afraid of destroying the world. It hurts to see this cutie little pure robot girlie talk about herself in such a way, and it makes you happy that she's around understanding people who wouldn't want to abuse that kind of power for bad things, unlike Torna, who creates artificial blades like herself to use them for a bad purpose. The dynamic between Poppi and Tora is also perfect. She doesn't take his shit and treats him more like a man-child than the kind of owner he wants to be for her with his whole maidey stuff. Tora may have wanted a cute obedient maid robot, but he actually got a girl boss maid robot who will make him clean his own room instead of her doing it for him, which is pretty neat. Malos is one of the best villains ever in a Nintendo game, with so many layers that he deserves his whole own video, but there wouldn't be a Malos without a Malphas. Obviously he was a bit influenced by Malphas, since we know that blades are influenced by who awakens them, but they hated the world for vastly different reasons, and to a degree, both of them still believed they could save the world in their own way. Malphas wanted to cleanse the world of any kind of impurity, believing in a rather simple worldview of if you do this, then you're evil and don't deserve to live. Being a huge hypocrite too, for killing the people who wanted to actually make the world a better place, and basically wanted to be the god of a new world. He didn't want the world to truly end. He wanted to be the leader of it and shape it in his own way. To a degree, he still believed in the good of mankind and clung to his own idealistic views of how the world should be. But Malos just detested humans, thinking every person would be better off dead basically, even if they put on an happy act. Pure nihilism, and he just wanted to destroy it all, because through Amalthus he saw the worst of humanity, but didn't want to be some kind of new leader for them. He thought ending humanity would just be better than having to go through suffering, because he knew it can't be erased fully. If humans exist, then there will be suffering, so it's best to just not have any humans, right? Through Jin and the other Tora members, he does develop empathy, because he knows their struggles. It's a bunch of people grouped together who had to go through the worst of humanity and all just wanted it to end basically, while still being emotionally attached to the world despite it. None of them truly wanted to die, just like Rex says, especially Jin. Even Malos himself realizes what he's doing is wrong, but it's too late to stop, because, well, he's a bit stubborn like that. And still believing in his mission, because for him it was the reason of his existence. And that's why he clung so hard to it. Destroying everything because that's what he thought he was created for. Only really learning that this worldview is a tiny itsy bitsy wrong throughout the journey, especially at the end of it, when he has his little meeting with the architect who tells him he is his own person and he chose this path and it wasn't just destined to be this way. It actually fills him with guilt that he has to blame himself for all the suffering he caused too, calling himself a monster that can't be redeemed anymore, regardless of what he does, even if he tries to atone for his sins. You can see it well in a scene where Grams is telling him if it weren't for him, Laura's and Jin's lives would have taken really different paths if it wasn't for him, saying he's exactly right, and in the final battle where he asks Rex if he would forgive Jin for what he has done, he basically asked the question also for himself a bit, basically asking Rex if he would be able to even forgive someone like Malos, looking for at least a bit of salvation, not even having an answer for it when Rex just gigashats him and tells him, yeah, you idiot, I would forgive you. He knows he's wrong, but he's still too prideful to just say those words that he doesn't want all of this anymore and sees death as the only way to at least salvage his own existence in a way. On the surface, he's just this fun asshole villain, but the deeper you dig, the more you realize how tragic his story of him trying to find his own purpose is and only realizing it when it's way too late for him. Much like Malos, he's one of the best Nintendo villains ever, and without Jin there wouldn't be a Malos and vice versa, at least in the base game. He's stoic, but also kind, but to outsiders, he's mostly just a cold, cool guy who is great at battling, but doesn't even like to battle and only does it because he has to. After losing his driver called Laura and basically eating her, he had no purpose in life anymore except for living on, for keeping her alive in his memories, because she left him with the parting words of the thought of you forgetting me. It's like a heart being ripped into two. Even Malos says that those words were like a curse to him, but also a blessing in its own way. With only the base game and without the expansion, I felt Jin felt a bit flat on my first playthrough to me. I didn't know why I was exactly supposed to suddenly feel bad for him. When he dies after redeeming himself a bit after killing Amalthus, he killed tons of people who didn't exactly deserve it, and that also includes the reawakened Haze. And his motivations also looked a bit dumb. Like, dude, you literally teamed up with the person that was to blame for all of this. But thinking about it and also playing Tora makes you understand him more. He always saw the human suffering going on. He literally was awakened and had to protect Laura the moment he came alive. The thing that kept him going was Laura though, with her warmth and smile and the camaraderie of the others like Haze, Adam, Mythra, Bridget, etc. Life may have not been the best, but it was acceptable to him. Even after beating Malos, he was satisfied to just keep on living with Laura together. But in the end, Amalthus took that from him when they mortally wounded Laura and basically killed her, since she would have died anyways even if he didn't aid her to at least keep the memories alive of her instead of him. His only reason to keep living now. He already saw lots of suffering before this, but this was the breaking point for him that made him realize that maybe humanity really deserved to die, and Malos had the right idea. Most of those things also got explained in the base game, but playing through the expansion it just gives so much more added context that it really makes him shine more. Seeing how broken he was at the end and aimlessly living through 500 years, seeing the worst of humanity and then getting picked up by his own enemy he fought 500 years ago, who actually accepts him now. It gave him a new purpose to help out Malos to fulfill his goal this time instead of fighting against each other. They just fight together now. Just like Malos, you could make a video about just him and go on, but that's the gist of it. He has way more themes than just his hatred for humanity, and in a way it feels like I'm doing him a little bit of a disservice describing him like the way I did before I didn't even understood his great character at first. But he seems like one of those villains that make you think, huh, that's so cliche, but the more you think about his actions and words, the more you really understand how great he actually is. It took me a while too. Even though I think most people who played the game and didn't like it much always said he was like a shining light in a sea of mud, so yeah. The other group members of Torna are kinda whatever kind of characters. They all have their own little backstories about how they became flesh eaters or also a blade eater, but Malos and Jin are the real stars of it with their bromance. In some way I just can't help it, but love this little family of nihilistic fucks who want to put an end to the world. Makes me think of my emo phase when I was younger, even though I didn't want the end of the world, but you know, it sounds cool. The rest of the main cast, like Morak and Zeke, are already completed characters in a way where you notice their changes in a few more subtle ways than them actually changing in those huge ways. At the start we see Morak as some cold woman who mostly just does her job and just works for her country. But after meeting Rex and joining the party, you also see the more human side of her, starting to show more and more emotions instead of just being a ragey slavey in the military. Zeke has the opposite of this. You meet him as this ultimate goofball together with Pandoria, who turns every scene into a comedy before he joins your party, and you learn that he's actually really mature and grown up if he needs to be. In my opinion, not every character needs a huge character development arc. The game gives those to mostly the really important characters who shine through them, while the supporting characters show those influences on themselves. How Rex, through his sheer naivety at points and positivity, changes the people around him in a world that looks to be doomed, trying his best even when it's a bit misguided at times. And if I try to analyze every single important characters in every single detail, this would turn into one of those 10-hour videos, and I don't think I could handle that. I can hardly even handle making a video that goes for more than 10 minutes most of the time. Before release, many people also wondered if it's actually going to be a true sequel because of the 2 in the title, or if it's going to be more like a Final Fantasy situation where every game is its own little thing and it's not required to play the others. And in a way it's true for Xenoblade 1 and 2, they are totally fine as a standalone game, to a degree 3. 2, but less than 2 and 1. That's a lot of 2 and 1s and 3s. At least that's how I see it. Xenoblade 1 was a completed package where you think, great ending, but the devs could clearly make another game afterwards that shows them rebuilding their world, etc., if they wanted to. Then Xenoblade 2 was announced and it had a completely new look, new characters, etc. So it was easy to assume it was its own thing too. And it stands on its own feet, even if you never played 1 before, but the experience just gets enhanced so much by knowing 1. When you get that little vision of one of the late game Xenoblade 1 cutscenes in chapter 7 in Xenoblade 2, after Rex touches the third sword, it was one of the biggest moments I ever had in a game. I sat there and thought, okay, wait a moment, why did they show a really short scene of a Xenoblade 1 cutscene? What does it even mean? Who is this old man? The story is already starting to go crazy, and now you also throw this in to start one of the wildest late games I have ever experienced in a video game. These 3 little seconds just make you wonder what's still to come and how this game correlates to the first one, since nothing really to this point did that. Then Malos screams and uses Monado moves with his very own Monado, and you think, okay, what the heck, is it just a little reference? You get kicked down into the cloud sea shortly after that and see a modern human world completely destroyed, thinking, wait, what if this was the world of Xenoblade 1 before all of the crazy stuff happened? Then chapter 10 opens up with that one cutscene where you suddenly see Claus, the main villain of Xenoblade 1, basically, and it just makes you think, okay, damn, okay. Turns out that Claus is back, but this time as a pretty much good guy who regrets everything he has done. The Claus from Xenoblade 1 was a maniac who fucked with the lives of everyone because he got a taste of power and wanted to fool and tool around with it. The Claus from Xenoblade 2 is the complete opposite, who realized how foolish he was when he pressed the button that pretty much ended the world despite not having much of a choice in his situation. Both Clauses became gods in their own way. While Claus in 1 abused the power he got and played around with it to cause suffering, the Claus in 2 just created the world again to try to atone for his sins and let it do whatever. He didn't want to do the same mistake again to use the power he has in either way. He did absolutely nothing to interfere in any way or shape. In a way, he's an idiot. He could have used the power he had to actually stop the bad things in the world, but instead he only wanted to observe. Probably afraid of his own power, just like Pyra and Mythra. What if I interfere and it actually turns out worse? But because of seeing how Rex managed to show them their true worth, it maybe even showed Claus that he can use his own power for good too, which we see happening in the end where he gives them his last gift, reuniting the Titans with the land. It's just interesting how Xenoblade 2 managed to make Claus into a way more complete and interesting character. I wonder how I would turn out with so much power in my hands. I've been a forum moderator and never abused my power on there, which means I would make a good god. Let's just ignore that it was my very own forum with only like 5 users, but still, you know, I could have banned those people. And the coolest thing about it all is that the game isn't even a sequel, but it runs at the same time as Xenoblade 1. When Shulk gives Sansa the final hit, it basically happens at the same time as Rex giving Aeon and Malos the final hit. Hearing Shulk yell his famous line about how today we fell a god and then seize our destiny was the ultimate PogChamp moment in a video game for me. I know people don't use PogChamp anymore, but back at release of the game people still did. So I don't even know what this is being called, where basically a sequel is not a real sequel, but runs at the same time as the original. If there's even a word for it. I tried googling it, but couldn't find anything. This was the moment in the game where I felt Xenoblade is just a magical franchise and I became a true fan of it. Like I was already a fan of Xenoblade 1 before, but that game didn't quite hit me as much as this one did, but it still hit me a lot, obviously. After I finished Xenoblade 2, I just longed for more and finally checked out Xenogears and the Xenosaga games, and I will buy anything Monolith Soft and Tetsuya Takahashi create for the rest of my life. It is by far my favorite soundtrack of all time in any medium. The sheer quality and quantity too is just amazing. The field themes, the battle themes, everything is just perfect. And I have to say, I'm no expert on music. I can't analyze it like others can, especially people who studied it. So I'm just a normal person listening to it without any kind of deep knowledge of it. Xenoblade 1's OST was already amazing and I consider X's soundtrack as one of Savano's best works, but the Xenoblade 2 OST just hits different. I would recommend listening to the field themes or any of the battle themes, because they all slap and bang. That's what kids nowadays say, right? I don't want to artificially stretch the length of the video by including a few snippets from my favorite songs here and there, but I really would like to, but I won't. You can hear the amazing soundtrack in the background already anyways. Sorry for ruining it with me talking over it though. No other video game soundtrack also makes me re-feel all those feelings I had during the times they played in the game. Walking With You or also the Tomorrow With You make me basically tear up almost immediately when I hear them, like full on crying like a baby kind of mode, snot coming right out of my nose kind of mode. Sorry, that feels a bit disgusting to say, but it's just the truth. Drifting Soul is also forever going to be my favorite Xenoblade song with vocals probably, despite the ones in Xenoblade 3 also being amazing and making me tear up as well, just not as much as Drifting Soul. The lyrics, the melody, everything about it is just, you just feel it in your soul. It suits your soul in a crying way, but in a good crying way. It helps that all the cutscenes with it are basically also absolutely beautiful as well. But when talking about music, you can also include sounds, and when talking about sounds, you can also include the voice acting. And well, the game kinda has this bad reputation for having bad voice acting, which mostly comes from Rex's voice acting in the English dub. His screams in the game are fairly bad. For me, they even ruin specific scenes in the game, like in chapter 7 when he tells Pyra and Mythra to join them and it's just so flat. Same for when he yells their names in chapter 2 at the very end. Luckily I played through the game in Japanese for my first playthrough and then picked English on my second playthrough to finally also understand the post-battle lines and all the little things being said during battle and etc. And those actually add a lot of dialogue. It's amazing how there's so much dialogue for something most people will never even get to hear, since every party combination gets their own few lines, which makes Xenoblade 3 lack of them a bit sad. You hear the same thing over and over, while in Xenoblade 2 there are so many of them. Seeing all the different blades interact in their own ways with their own personalities and hearing what they talk about is just so cute and funny. If you played through the game only in Japanese, please do yourself a favor and look them up on YouTube. A bit sad they never subtitled them, but I guess that would be a lot of work, but I mean, it's a job and you know, I don't like to work, but I understand. Back to the voice acting though, I do love the English dub for the most part. Especially Nia's voice actor does a perfect job. It gives Nia so much flavor with that Welsh accent, and it still fits her personality perfectly. It doesn't feel forced at all. Overall, the whole cast feels down to earth in the best dubbed kind of way. Sometimes dubbed things feel so overdone with how hard they try to emulate the original Japanese, but here it doesn't come across that way. It's kinda its own thing without giving the characters a different personality. Except Malos, he goes over the top in the best way, yelling so loudly and manly, which makes me want to join Tora and follow every single one of his orders. His English voice actor together with Nia's just kinda steal the show. It's just a bit sad that Rex couldn't hit those screams either, despite the voice actor being able to do completely normal screams in his other roles. So in the end it was most likely a case of a bad voice directing, at least that's what people say. I have no idea about how any of this works, but I read they didn't even get to see the scenes they were acting for and had no context, which is just kinda stupid, even to someone who knows nothing about it. And I think that just about sums it up. But the thing is, every time when I'm uploading a video, I realize, oh wait, I could have talked about that and this and blah blah. Hopefully that won't happen here. Even though, like I said, there's so much more things to say story-wise and character-wise. I also did not create this video to change the mind of others. If you like the game, yay. If you don't like the game, also yay. I didn't try to make some kind of critique video. I just really wanted to talk about it a bit and say why I just love it so much. It's just a game that came at the right time for me, but I don't want to get too personal with that. I would forever dearly carry it in my heart, and I think we all have a game like that. Maybe, you don't, so that's also fine. Here's to many more Xenoblade games or anything else that Monolith Soft creates, because I will be there day one. Also, I'm gonna give you a little job. This summer, when the Barton Kaitos Remastered Collection releases, please buy it. I sure hope this part won't age badly when it flops, because I really want it to become a hit so we can get Barton Kaitos 3 one day. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you can leave a like or maybe even a subscription if you really want to. Have yourself a good morning, evening, night, whatever time it is for you right now. I guess it would have been easier to just say have yourself a good one, but yeah, have yourself a good one.